Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Paragon Guide. I am Sylphin. In this video we are taking a look at the math behind the best deck structure. What is the best way to structure your deck with how many cards, with what kind of upgrades to give you the most power at all times. Because we only have 40 equipment slots, it makes it difficult to build a deck that gives you the most power at all times while still giving you a good endgame build. If you have ever wondered about what the best deck structure is, this is the video for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are a few statements we need to make first before we go into this guide. Statement number one, the most value is found in fully upgraded bonuses and or special passives and actives. Those cards that do something kind of special when you equip them or when you fully upgrade them, those are the cards that give us the most value. There is a bonus to them, or that active or passive is really good, and it gives us more value than the CP we put into it. There is a bonus, and you need to be aware of that. Statement two, building a deck with as many of these as possible is ideal. You want to do it. Why wouldn't you? You want to have as much value as possible in your deck. You don't want to not have a powerful deck, right? You want to dominate your enemy, so you want a deck with as many of these as possible. Statement number three, having the most value at all times, however, is ideal. If I'm at 10 CP, I want 11 CP of value. I want 12 CP of value. If I'm at 20 CP, I want 22 CP of value. I want as much value as possible at all times. So it doesn't matter if you're in the end game, if you're in the early game, if you're in the mid game, you want as much value as possible at all times. So with those said, with those key things in mind, please remember those. How do we build some decks here that serve those statements? So we have different scenarios. We have 6 scenarios in total. So this is scenario 1. It's your default deck. It's 6 cards, 10 CP each. That's it. That's a default deck, and they have 3 tokens in them. There's usually a blink charm. There's 3 situational cards. You see here situational cards, and then down here, the whole game, once at the final build, you have six 10-point cards giving you one bonus, 1 upgrade bonus each, 60 CP, 66 of value, and there's 4 equipment slots for each of them, 1 for the card, 3 for the upgrades, gives you equipment slots of 40 plus all of these plus your tokens. Pretty simple. Now, the early game is actually the default deck is actually pretty darn okay. Once you actually build into it, it's actually okay. It's kind of surprising how effective, if you use them right. It's okay. But now, what if we want to go the absolute most ideal scenario? What is the most ideal deck that we can possibly make? Well, 3 tokens to start the match, right? 3 CP, 3 tokens, or health pots, or whatever. 6 6-point cards into a 4 12-point cards in the late game. That is the ideal situation. Early game, 6 6-point cards giving you a 1 CP bonus per card, so that by the time you have 36 CP, you have 6 cards, all worth 6 CP each, giving you a total value of 42 CP. That's the most value you can have here without special actives or anything that you can possibly have. Equipment slots, you've used 24 equipment slots at that point. Now in the end game, you keep 2 of your early game cards, which is what we have kind of highlighted here in yellow. You keep 2 of them, but then you switch 4 of them out for 12-point cards, with a fully upgraded bonus each. You have 13 value, 4 equipment slots, giving you 60 total CP, 66 value, but there's an issue. This is too idealistic. This is 43 equipment slots, and we only have 40. We have a problem. This does not work. Taking into account the tokens with 6 point cards with all of the upgrades in them, there is a problem. 43 equipment slots. We could get rid of those tokens, and then you just go into your first 6-point card right off the bat. But usually they don't give you 3 CP right off the bat. They only give you 2, and that isn't ideal. So what are some other options we can do here? Well, we scroll down into probably the most common thing that people do here, scenario 3. 1 6-point card, 2 9-point cards, and 3 12-point cards there in your final build. That's, I think, the most common that people do. It's really what I hear being thrown around a lot. So what is this scenario? Well, you start off with your three tokens, then you go into 4 6-point cards with fully upgraded bonuses each, equipment slots. So by the time you have 24 CP, you actually have 28 CP of value with using 16 equipment slots. But if you wanted to build more 6-point cards, you would have an issue slotting in your 2 9s and your 3 12s because of equipment slots. You can't continue going into 6-point cards. You can't because of equipment slots. So what do you have to do? After these first 4, then you should logically go into your 2 9-point cards. One could certainly argue that the difference between a 6-point card and a 9-point card really isn't that much. But is there a better option? Yes, there is, and we'll talk about that later. So here in the end game, you get your 2 9s, and then you go about replacing these 3 6s with these 3 12s. Now, as you can see, again, 60 CP, you have 66 of value, perfect, but you are now good on equipment slots. You are now good. You have 39 equipment slots, add in an extra token, add in another upgrade card to one of your 12s to make it a kind of a flexible upgrade option. Who knows, probably another token just so that when you go back to base with an extra CP, you can throw in a token. Now, that is the most common, and as you can see, it works out very well. 4 tokens available to you at 40 equipment slots. Your final build has 6 fully upgraded bonuses. Perfect, a lot of value for your 60 CP, wonderful. Now, we can move on here to this next scenario. This is a pretty weird scenario. I don't think I've ever heard people doing this. I certainly wouldn't recommend it. Final endgame build is 4 9-point cards and 2 12-point cards. This is the most strange. Don't recommend doing this, but this is an option. 3, you start off with your tokens, and then you start off with your 3 early game 6-point cards. And then you end up getting, I guess, 3 more 9-point cards. You end up replacing one of your 6s with a 9. And then you go into 2 12-point cards to finish off the 2 6s from before. Again, this does work, and it could possibly work in a fashion of getting 3 9s after your 3 6s. Really isn't that difficult, and then you have an easy 9 there to replace to replace an early 6, because you already have 6. You only need 3 to upgrade it, and then your 2 12s later on. Maybe this isn't that bad of an option, but certainly maybe a little bit weird. I haven't tried this, maybe wouldn't recommend it for you. Now, there is something else about this scenario that is weird. Besides the fact that I just did a costume change, this scenario is the worst scenario to give us 6 fully upgraded bonus cards as fast as possible. It is the worst one besides the default deck. This is the worst scenario in terms of giving us that early power as fast as we can. So is there a scenario where we can have 6 6-point cards and give us that extra fully upgraded bonus value but not run into a equipment slot problem? Well, this is it. This is my proposed perfect deck structure. To kind of overall, the end game build is 6 6-point cards for the early game, and then 4 12-point cards but those can be flexible and they can include unique actives and large affinity upgrades. So they can have large 4 and 5 point upgrades, and the fact that those are 4 12s don't necessarily have to be 12s. I would say that those 4 12 point cards have to add up to 48 total CP, but they don't each have to be 12. They can be 10s and 14s. They can be whatever you want, as long as, ladies and gentlemen, as long as the equipment slots are cut down. Right now I'm kind of guesstimating that I can throw in some cool active cards and get some extra value out of that. So I have 14 of value here for my 12 point cards, and that I'm getting that 14 of value with one equipment slot for the card itself, and then one 5 point upgrade or one 4 point upgrade, what have you, in order to total 12. That is how I am proposing that we can make the perfect deck structure. 6 point cards followed into 4 12, 10s, and 14 point cards that equals 48, as long as they have, you don't go over that equipment slot maximum. Use those unique actives that absolutely is available to everybody. There's wonderful unique active, unique passive cards that all heroes can use. Use those 4 and 5 point affinity upgrades to your advantage so that you can get that power in the early game, which is so much more important now in Monolith, to dominate your enemy. That is my proposed structure. Completely doable, and I don't think it is at all far-fetched to try something like this. It's absolutely possible for you guys to throw something like this in here. This could even be a blink charm that you don't even upgrade, period, and then you can just make, throw that extra 7 CP onto here with those 4 and 5 point upgrades, which won't be that bad to get because you are replacing your 6 point card, so you will have some wiggle room there to get it. It's totally doable, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think it's far-fetched to propose something like this. Now, you're probably wondering, what about those Fury cards, those 2 point Fury cards with a fully upgraded bonus? Fury affinity heroes have an advantage. They have a serious advantage. So this is the scenario Fury's madness, because it's completely crazy. 6 5 point cards, ladies and gentlemen, that give you, at 30 CP, you have 36 CP's worth of value, while only being at 30. So while everybody else has to wait till 36 to even have the potential of unlocking 42 CP's worth of value, you're already skyrocketing into these 12 and 13 point cards here. By the time you are at 30 CP of cost, you get 36 of value. That is crazy. That is 6 CP that you are far ahead of your enemy. It's really quite something. Now, later on, though, you have to make up for that. Just like in my proposed perfect structure, you need cards with only one 5 point upgrade, or one. You really need to utilize those 4 and 5 point upgrades to really cut down on those equipment slots. It is completely doable, and I think really isn't that much of a hindrance, because you can use those unique actives to maybe get a little bit more value than you would otherwise a fully upgraded bonus. You can still get good value out of your finished deck while doing this. It is completely possible, and I don't think it's far-fetched for either case here to propose such a thing. Please, ladies and gentlemen, consider this. Now, it is hard to do this. It is hard to do this because of 1 point upgrades. while Monolith has been very nice to us in terms of taking physical and energy damage out of the equation and just combining it into power, meaning that we have all of those 1-point cards that we weren't able to use before, while we still have a lot of 1-point upgrades, I still can't build, with all 1-point power upgrades. I can't. I don't have enough of them. So what you have to do instead is something a little bit different. Using non-power 1-point upgrades like kinetic, mana, crit, etc., and cards high in power just naturally on the card will help you build 6.6 cards with 1-point upgrades in them. Does that make sense? So basically, take a card that has a lot of power on it, and then in the upgrades, add in those secondary and tertiary stats that you need. Fill those early 6-point cards with kinetic upgrades, with mana upgrades, with pen upgrades, which not really I don't recommend, but with crit upgrades. Use those other upgrades along with those 1-point upgrades, so you can spread what 1-point power upgrades you do have amongst those 6 cards, and just get the cards that have lots of power on them, and then you can use the other those other upgrades that you do have in order to best spread out that power across that, because it is an issue. I don't have enough 1-point power cards to get those, crazy whirling wands and etc. So don't be afraid to use those 1-point kinetic, mana, etc. cards on your on those early cards, because you can make it work for sure. There you guys go. That is my proposed perfect structure and their Fury equivalent. It is absolutely possible. There are tons of unique active cards and cards that don't need a lot of upgrades on them that can be absolutely critical to a build. I absolutely implore you to try this perfect structure, because Monolith doesn't get to the end game very much, not in how the game is now. So unlocking that extra 6 CP worth of value, that is that is a significant amount. You are 1/6 ahead of the enemy. That is huge. 15-20% ahead of the enemy in terms of additional power and stats. That is huge. So it is very important that you guys try this out. Please like this video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it, share it with the community, please. So many people, I think, could learn from this. And of course, subscribe. If you like this content, found it useful, please subscribe so I can do it for you in the future. Till next time, like always, stay optimistic and positive.